Good morning. Thank you all for joining us here at the back of the President's Home at Jones College. Welcome our friends, the birds, and maybe some traffic that may come by, but thank you for being with us. My name is Jason Detwalder, and my guest today is my good friend, Dr. Samuel Jones. As you remember, Dr. Jones hosted a podcast last semester called Pause and Connect. And during one of those podcasts, I was his guest, and he interviewed me and put me in the hot seat. So I joked around during that time, Sam, we got to put you in the hot seat. When is that time going to come? So today is that time, so I hope you're ready for it.
I am.
Part of the time we were setting up this interview, Dr. Jones challenged me and he said, Jason, our intent and purpose obviously is for Black History Month, but I challenge you to create a discussion that we can have for us to supersede one event. So I hope I can do that some justice today. We're here to celebrate Black History Month. Started in 1915 after the abolition of slavery, each year it has a theme, and this year's theme is Black family, representation, identity, and diversity. Dr. Jones, as we celebrate that time together, tell us a little bit about your family and your history.
Well, first of all, it's an honor for me to just have an opportunity to do this interview with you and an opportunity to share. So my family, I think my family represents the fracture of this country. I think there's so many different groups, different races, different ethnicities, and for my family, so I have three sisters, one brother, my mom and my stepfather, but I was actually raised by my grandmother. And, my grandmother, she didn't have a formal education, but she drove a school bus for 30 years. And she taught me so much about life and leadership and faith and love. And so I think it's important that we all do some research on our families and understand where we've come from and the challenges and barriers that we've overcome. Because that's really, really important. And in order for us to really be graceful enough to deal with the challenges of today, we need to know where we've come from. And history, our own history, is the best place to start, because I think sometimes we are discouraged. We're not encouraged to keep working hard, and so many things that happen outside of our circle, and sometimes it can bother us.
Yeah, absolutely. So you think about your family and your history, where we've come from, because each of us have that story and that journey that we're on. Is there a defining moment in your journey so far that you think has set you on the path that you've taken?
Wow, I can think of three. And the reason why I want to share three is because I want to give a perspective. Because sometimes we look at one thing in our life and we think that defines us, but it's really not. It's just it's a milestone. So three scenarios. So one event happened to me when I was a freshman at the University of Southern Mississippi, a freshman basketball player, and so excited to be there. But at the end of my first spring semester, I was academically suspended from the university. And a lot of people really don't know this.
I'm sorry, I've got to laugh.
No, it's all good. It's all good.
You work in higher education.
I work in higher education, and I was academically suspended my freshman year. And I needed that because I was floundering. I mean, I was not taking my education really serious. And I had an opportunity to go before this committee, and I prayed and I asked them to give me another chance and that they'll never see me again. And they did. And that thing taught me two things that I needed to do. Number one, I needed to change my major. I was in the wrong major. Didn't realize it, but I was in the wrong major. And the second thing that I changed was my mindset, because I had to learn how to take personal responsibility for my results. When you're young, it's so easy to point the finger out there and say it's somebody else's fault. But you know what? That was one of the first scenarios in my life to where it's all on me, and I had to make some changes. And so that was one event. The second event is when I was in Finland playing professional basketball. I tell you, Jason, I heard the voice of God speak to me and tell me that you're supposed to be doing something else. And I really didn't know what that was. And so after that first year, I came back to Mississippi, and I floundered just trying to figure out what I'm supposed to be doing. Well, I found myself working at a factory, 12 hours a day, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And, I was standing in one spot in this factory working all day, and it was like a deep, compassionate concern came over me, thinking that you're supposed to be doing something greater than this. And here I am working in a factory, and I'm looking around like, man, I think I may be the only person in here with a 4-year college degree. And that is when I really truly got on a path of seeking my faith, seeking God. And God means so many things to different people, but for me, it was just trusting in something bigger than me. And I submitted to that, and lo and behold, when that change happened, that's when I came here as the assistant basketball coach. And it put me on a path of not being focused on me, but being focused on the people around me and meeting their needs, and going back to school and getting a PhD and a master's degree. And so that was a really important turning point for my life. And then, of course, the last experience is one Sunday morning, sitting in church service, my pastor was preaching this message, and the title of his subject was Empty But Need to Be Filled. And as I'm sitting here listening to him preach this message, I heard, filled, but you need to be emptied. And it was a deep calling on my life to be a minister. And when God called me into the ministry, he said, I don't want you to be like everybody else. I want you to be different. I want you to use your gift, skills, and talents to share the gift and to empower people. And so, for me, my work, my business, I'm working here at the college, everything that I'm doing is all about empowering people. And so those were 3 critical experiences in my life, and I'll never forget them, and I have plenty more, but that's all we're going to share today.
Well, that's a great segue to the next question I want to ask you, but I want to go back to, what was your major when you first started college?
The funny thing is, it was business administration. And the reason why I chose business administration is because it sounded good. I mean, so when I started working here at Jones, I had a lot of compassion for students when they came here and didn't know what they wanted to major in, because that's the way I was. When I was working in student affairs, I had compassion on students when they had to go before our committee. They were suspended or on probation, because guess what? I experienced that. And so I think it's important for all of us to always reflect on our own experiences when we're serving our students, when we're serving, no matter who we're serving, because we have to learn how to walk in other people's shoes. Sometimes we don't. That's why Black history is so important. I think when we don't know each other's story, know each other's experiences, it's another thing that separates us, because we're different. We're not all different, and we're all the same. We all have the same journey, and we have to learn from each other. And that's why I think the importance of Black History Month.
I want to get to your journey a little bit more later on, because we've talked before in the past about success not defining you by your failures, but that is a part of your journey and how you get there. And the path you described is very much what we would draw out for a student here at Jones. It's all over the place to get to what you want to achieve, but it's not a very straight line from A to B to be successful. The time I've got to know you and we become friends, Sam, I've always known you to be a change agent and a life coach in every aspect of your life, whether it's coaching basketball or whether it's playing basketball. I know you were a leader in your team, whether it's coaching basketball, student affairs, whether it's your business, whether it's your ministry, whether it's my friend, you've always been in the life-changing business. So tell me about that journey, what it means to you to be part of that and answering that call.
Well, I'll tell you one quick story that really solidified the call in my life. So I will not tell the city, but I was at a place doing a 4-hour leadership training session. And it was about 25 people in the room, and these were all adults. And there was one Caucasian guy sitting in the back of the room. I mean, I was up doing leadership training and telling stories and telling jokes and doing all these activities. Well, this guy was sitting in the back of the room with his arms folded. He was disinterested, not laughing, he acted as if he didn't want to be there. And I was up front and I was saying, okay, Sam, you got to find a way to reach this guy. So I took on the challenge of, I got to reach him. Well, guess what? He never responded. So at the end of my 4-hour presentation, I'm getting my laptop and all my stuff together, and the same guy, he walks up to me and he says, Dr. Jones, I need to talk to you. I'm thinking in my head, why does he want to talk to me? You know, he was not interested in this presentation. And I said, okay, sure. So I gave my undivided. I said, what's your name? He said, my name's Larry. I said, Larry, what's up? He said, he says, my mom dropped out of school in the 7th grade. I said, okay. He says, I dropped out of school in the 7th grade. I said, okay. He says, I never thought that I can learn anything. I said, okay. I'm thinking, where is this going? And he stood there and looked at me in my eyes, and his eyes began to tear up, and he said, but today I figured out that I can learn. I said, really? He said, yeah. He said, I've been sitting here with you for 4 hours and listening to you tell these stories, do these activities. He said, today, I realized I can learn. I said, Larry, man, that is cool. Gave him a high five, and he said, but Dr. Jones, I need you to do me a favor. I said, what is it? He said, no, he said, I don't want you to just haphazardly agree. I need you to do me a favor. I said, Larry, what is it? He says, I know you preach and teach and you speak all over the place. I said, I do. He said, here's what I need you to do for me. I need you to think about people like me every time you stand up and speak. Now, guess what? My eyes began to tear up in water because I realized that it was not about me and how I was seeing him. I realized that the work that I'm doing is making an impact on people, even though for me, it may look like it's not. And so that experience right there, and there's a number of others, but it's just recognizing that the work that we do is really, really important in education. And I never want our faculty to not take that for granted and understand the impact that they're making in the classroom, because our students are coming from so many different walks of life. And some of them have so many barriers to overcome. And I think our faculty are doing a fantastic job of encouraging our students and meeting them exactly where they are. But the most important piece is not leaving them where they are. It's taking them forward. And I think that's the work that we do here in education. And for me, the work that I've been doing, that's what it's been doing. I'm telling you, I lived off of that little story there for like 6 months. But it's important work that we do.
Well, and you still are. I hope Larry gets the opportunity to see this because you're following through with your commitment.
Absolutely. And guess what? I tell my personal stories when I'm doing leadership training, because I think it's important for people to understand we're all just alike. We're all overcoming something, and it's important that we learn from one another. You know, success leaves clues. It leaves clues. So if we want to be successful, let's learn from people who have had barriers, had challenges. What did they do to overcome? How were they thinking? What kind of attitude did they have? Let's take on that and then go forward.
Absolutely. And you're right. There is a Larry in every classroom on our campus.
Absolutely.
And there's something we can learn from that experience and exposure, and taking him to the next level.
That's right.
Absolutely. So, talking about Larry, talking about some of your journey here, I told you I want to come back to a little bit of how that success story and journey, what it looks like for all of us. Mm-hmm. How do you deal with failure? How do you overcome that? Not any specific examples unless you want to share those, not to get too personal, but we've all experienced that. But channeling that is really hard to do sometimes. So what would be your advice of how do you deal with failure? How do you move that to the next level?
Well, it's going to sound strange when I say this, but it works for me. The first thing I do is take it personal. I take failure personal. And I don't mean that I'm blaming somebody else, but I take it personal from a standpoint that it's all on me. You know, when we start to look outside of ourselves and find reasons why we were not successful, then we have just given our power to whatever we're putting outside of ourselves. The second piece is we have to take personal responsibility. You know, I'll never forget, and I'll tell the personal story because to be honest with you, it makes us real. At Southern Miss freshman, first exhibition basketball game, I dunked in the wrong goal.
Tell just a little bit of that story. That's a good story. I like that story.
Well,
it's funny.
You know,
it's funny, but it was a life lesson.
Yeah, it's a life lesson, and I was so excited to be on the court as a freshman. And we go out there and line up, and I'm excited. My teammates excited, and my center, he tips the ball to me, and I get it, and I'm like, well, we're going this way, and this is so I go and dunk it. Well, guess what? I'm the only one excited in the Reed Green. And I come down, it's quiet. It's like, why everybody's not happy like me? Well, the ref's like, T gave me a tech, and it's like, you scored in the wrong basket. And my teammates, they ragged me for days about that. And the crowd, they were laughing. But a couple days later, we went back and watched the game film, and we realized that my center lined up on the wrong side of the court. I followed him. Now, I don't blame my center. I blame myself because as the leader, as one of the leaders, I should have picked up on it and said, hey, we're on the wrong side of the court here. But hey, I took full responsibility for that. But on the flip side, it's a leadership lesson. If we're going to follow people, we need to make sure that they're going in the right direction or they're taking us somewhere we want to go. And so I like to share that story because it humanizes me. It reminds people that I'm not perfect. You're going to make mistakes. But then the last piece is failure for me is feedback. I mean, failure, it tells you, do you need to add something? Do you need to take something away? Do you need to add people? Do you need to take people away? And so that's all failure is, and we learn from it, and I'm better because of the mistakes.
So Dr. Jones, we've talked about your journey and the path that you've taken to get where you are, and how that path is filled with failures and success, and overcoming a lot of things. What motivates you now to get up every morning and do what you do?
Well, I think it's seeing people overcome barriers and overcome challenges and becoming someone that they didn't realize that they could be. That's what I've been able to do for my life, and it hadn't been just me. It's my faith. It's the people that I surround myself with. It's the people that I reach out and connect with. It's my friends. It's my mentors, and so it's much bigger than me. But there are three words that I always keep on my radar: encouraged, inspiration, motivation. Now, in all three of those words, at the beginning, it means something. Inspiration to me is in spirit. I mean, we have to, in order for us to be inspired, we have to be in spirit. And, I can't have a lot of noise around me. I can't be ripping and running. I have to slow down and find that peace within. Motivation. You got to have a motive to do something, a motive to act. What pushes you to do what you do every single day. And then, of course, encourage. You have to be encouraged. I mean, you have to have fear around you to be encouraged. And so I think it's important for all of us to walk our own journey. And when we do that, the best will come out, but the best is not about us, it's about helping other people. And so, yeah, that's what drives me every single day.
Like you said about our best is helping other people. And we've set aside February for Black History Month. And part of the challenge that you gave me was let's surpass time and space for this month. But I want to talk a little bit about that. Black history, the contribution of African Americans to our country, and the culture that we have. How do we surpass time and place to celebrate that, not just 1 month out of the year, but throughout our life, our culture, and everything that we do?
I think we have to find ways to integrate what we learn. Black History Month, there's so many people we normally talk about, as Common Dr. King and Rosa Parks, the common names. But how do we take what we learned from them, and then we embrace that with the people that we know, that we see every single day, and then integrate that beyond Black history and say, you know what, maybe today I'm going to lunch with someone who looks different than me, to learn a little bit more about their journey. And not only that, you're breaking down the walls, because it's easy for all of us to assume that certain people act a certain way when we support something called, I love this word because I'm like, it really makes a lot of sense, confirmation bias. And confirmation bias is just collecting evidence to confirm what we already believe. It's like we see someone and we say, well, yeah, I don't think they're a good person. And then we go and collect evidence to confirm what we already believe, rather than looking for evidence to immobilize what we believe about other people. And that's why learning is so important. That's why people getting an education is so important. And so if we can learn how to integrate the things that we learn about Black history, about everybody, and then let that be a part of who we are, because we change, right? I think sometimes we want everybody else to change, but we don't change. And so as Americans, I think it's important for us to learn how to embrace each other. We all want the same thing. Sometimes it may look different, it may sound different, but at the end of the day, it's the same thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I don't want to get into politics a whole lot, but we're obviously at a point in our society right now, it is what it is.
Right.
And how do you think that with the influx of 24-hour news cycles, social media being what it is, how do we get past that to truly get to the point where you say we can embed who we are across all that we do every month out of the year? This is an important time, and it's very worthy that we set February aside to celebrate African Americans, and particularly the Black family this year, and the contributions made to who we are as a country. How do we get past that constant bombardment, though, of oftentimes negativity, to see past that?
Well, I think the first piece is recognizing that everything has a purpose. So if you're getting fed negative news from negative media, it's a purpose behind that. Someone somewhere is making money off of that. One thing that I learned when I was in my master's degree program at Southern Miss, for public relations and in my undergrad advertising is people pay, not just people, but organizations will pay for your attention. Now you just think about that. Organizations, businesses will pay for your attention because at the end of the day, they're trying to program you. And unfortunately, as a nation, we have been programmed to believe certain things about certain people, about certain times. I mean, so first of all, we have to acknowledge that. And because we can't change anything we're not aware of that we will not acknowledge. That's the first piece. The second piece is once we have been made aware, then we have to do things to make things a little bit different. So your programming creates your beliefs. Your beliefs create your attitudes. Your attitudes creates your feelings. And based on what we do, it's going to be based on how we feel. Think about it. You've done your best when you felt your best.
That's right.
And so just think about if you have negative programming. Do we have negative beliefs about each other? We have negative attitudes about each other. We have negative feelings about each other. And guess what? That's how we're going to act towards each other. And then we end up with those same results. And so until we begin to be honest with ourselves, to say, hold on, that's not right. You know, I mean, stand up and even in our families and say, that's not right. I don't think black people are like that. I don't think white people are like that. All of them are not like that. And so, and that's a tough conversation that I think we all have to have with our families.
I think we're scared to have those conversations too sometimes, even with one another. I think, and we don't need to be.
Well, I think the fear comes from the unknown. You know, when you've taken an opportunity to do something you've never done, it's scary. That's right. It's scary, but I think it's important. You know, all of us should have learned something from 2020. That, you know what, we all experienced the same thing. And unfortunately, so many things about the pandemic got politicized, wearing masks. I mean, all of these basic things to keep each other safe. But where did that come from? It came from people who needed something else to say, you know what, I want my freedom. Well, guess what? I want my freedom too. And I want freedom enough to you to be healthy and myself to be healthy. And so again, we all want the same thing. I think sometimes we say it differently. Sure. And until we learn to listen to each other, I mean, to truly listen, because it's important, you know, if you're speaking, for me to not have a conversation in my head on what I think you're saying. Let me truly listen to what you have to say, and vice versa. One of the skills, the things that I do in my leadership training to help people learn how to listen, and I had to do this when I was in my VP role, is to recite back to people what I hear them say. Number one, it confirms that I understand what you're saying. Number two, is letting you know that I'm listening to what you're saying. And so I think it's so many things that we have to do, but there's some basic small things that we can't start.
Yeah, you make a good point about recognition being first. Mm-hmm. What's coming at us and what we're taking in. And I know oftentimes we look to examples set by political figures, community leaders, and all of that. And tell me what your thoughts are on where does it start? Where does that change start as we move forward to try to some reconciliation and healing?
I think it starts with ourselves. I truly do. You know, I like to go back to when I was a freshman at Southern Miss and growing up in the Mississippi Delta and not being around a lot of white people, Caucasian people. I went to USM with a lot of biases and prejudices in my mind, even though people were helping me. But until I get to a point and realize to fight that confirmation bias and hold on, everybody's not like that. I mean, they're good people and good people are trying to help me. And so I need to embrace that. And so we have to learn how to open ourselves up to people helping us. Because one thing that I've learned, Jason, is when I was in student affairs, when students knew that we were there to help them, all the walls came down. It didn't matter if I had a suit and tie on. It didn't matter about my position. They knew that I wanted to help them. And so at the end of the day, if we can communicate to one another that I want to help you, I'm here to serve you and help you, because it's all about relationships. And throughout my entire journey, Southern Miss, playing basketball, working in education, with my business now, I recognize that everything that I do is all about relationships. And so until we put ourselves in positions to mend relationships, we'll keep duplicating the same problems.
So it begs the question, we've got a student body, thousands of students on our campus every day, mm-hmm. hundreds of faculty and staff here. There's no doubt people who feel disenfranchised at any given day. There's
Absolutely.
a population of that on our campus, and in our larger community that we impact, there are people who feel disenfranchised.
And to be honest with you, not to cut you off, but they have a valid reason to feel that way.
Absolutely.
And I think sometimes people don't appreciate that. They think, well, you shouldn't be feeling. Well, hold on. Who is you to say how I should and should not be feeling? So I think it's
How do
important.
we help that? As our mission here at the college, and then our personal faiths that we share and we talk about, how do we help reach those populations who feel disenfranchised?
I think approach our students, approach other people's different experiences, wanting to know them. I mean, the very nature when you approach people, I don't care if I'm in a classroom or I'm in an administration building, I don't care what title people have, if people are approaching me from a standpoint that you don't even want to know who I am and know my story and appreciate my story, I'm leery. And I recognize that, and so even with all of the work that I do, initially I want people to know, I want to know about you. Because when I know about you, now I can tweak what I do to better serve you. That's one of the greatest lessons I learned when I first started speaking. You know, when I first started, I had this magical idea that, man, I'm going to save the world because I have all of these great ideas. And guess what? Just because I stand and speak it and share it, you're going to take it and you're going to be a better person. Yeah, right. Yeah, right. So as I began to do more and more speaking, and stories like the Larry story I told you, I began to be more present and to be more about, okay, this is really not about me. This is about people that I'm serving. And before you can serve anyone, you need to know who they are. You need to know what their story is. You need to know what their challenges are. You need to know where they're from. You need to find things that you can connect with people. Because when we connect, guess what? You're willing to take my advice. You're willing to learn from my experience. But if we don't connect, you're probably sitting out there and saying, yeah, right, so what? So what to everything that I say? And so I think it's important that we approach people from a standpoint wanting to know about them, wanting to know what their goals are. What challenges are you dealing with right now? And now when you tell me the challenges that you're dealing with, so I'm running through my database, I have an example just like that to better serve you. And so it changed everything that I do. When I'm working with companies now, and they say, well, Dr. Jones, we want you to do this program. I said, okay, but I'm going to create this program to better fit your organization. Now let's sit down. What are your greatest challenges? Who are your stars? Who are your stars who right now they're not shining? See, I want to know more because I want to develop everything to better fit them. And so it's not about me and what I do.
So Dr. Jones, I know our time is wrapping up together. And as we discussed how the interview would flow, I told you there'd be some surprise questions at the end, but I didn't tell you what those questions were.
That's right. No, you didn't.
On
No,
purpose.
you didn't, but it's all
on
good.
purpose. And you know, when you did the podcast, I listened to all the podcasts before, thinking he may ask me that. Let me have a good answer for that, kind of thing. And then you threw some curveballs, didn't ask the same question. So I'm going to totally surprise him with these questions at the end.
Okay.
What is your favorite place on earth and why?
I think it's easy. Home. And the reason why I say that, last year, 2020, it forced me to hit the reset button. 2019, on my birthday, which is April 24th, I was traveling in 3 or 4 days around my birthday. I was traveling to 3 different cities and had to fly everywhere. And when 2020 hit, I was at home on my birthday. And it just forced me to really appreciate being at home, and because home is your safe place, right? It's the place where you can really take off all of the degrees, the accomplishments, and just really be the soul of who you are. And so I got back to that last year, and I made a commitment going forward that I want to live that. And so in the work that I'm doing now, it's all about just being as relaxed as possible, being in peace, being true to who I am. Because I think when we do that for ourselves, we give other people permission to do that for themselves. Absolutely. Because I think sometimes people hold you and your accomplishments to these standards, and they feel like they have to be a certain standard to be in your presence. Yeah. And I never want people to feel like that with me, because I'm no bigger or no better than anyone else. And so I think for me, just being at home and just appreciating that.
So around the college, we talk about sharpening the saw and taking time to sharpen the saw. How do you sharpen your saw?
Well, I do a lot of reading. So I read a lot of books, listen to a lot of podcasts. I try to watch things on TV that's going to help me be a better leader, a better business owner. I mean, for instance, there's two shows that I love to watch: CNBC, The Profit, and Shark Tank. Because I recognized when I first started watching Shark Tank, when people would come on, I was like, that's a crazy idea. Nobody's going to buy that. But then after I started watching, I realized, you know what, there's a market for everything. And not only that, you can learn from that. And so I like to see people take chances, take risk, and more importantly, become someone that they didn't think they could. So I do a lot of that. And another thing that I have is I have accountability partners. I have some people in my life that we do monthly calls, and you know, we share goals every month. And when we get up on our next call, I have to give them an update on where I am. Awesome. And sometimes it's not fun saying, well, last month I said I was going to do this, but I didn't get it done. But you know, people like that care about you and want you to be your very best. So it's a lot of small things that I do, but those are a few things right there.
So my last fun question, as I call it, what do you want your legacy to be? What do you want to be known for? That he cared. He cared about people. He cared about helping people. He cared about other people's faith. He cared about just seeing people to be successful. You know, it's amazing. I go back to the Mississippi Delta so many times in my head, and even when I'm doing my presentations, I show my grandmother's house, I show the road, I show all of that, and in the midst of that, it's like me reliving that. And that little kid that was there, and to see where I am now, it's encouraging, it's inspiring, it's motivating. And I want other people to have that same feeling about their own experience, their own story. And I think we can do that. And so I want people to just say, yeah, he cared. Fantastic. He cared. I want to thank you personally for inviting me to do this with you. It's a huge honor. I respect you greatly, and I cherish the friendship that we've grown to have over time. I know our time is really close to the end. I want to thank everybody else for joining us as well. But what I want to do is I want to get out of the way for a little bit, and I'll give you the podium and just close it out for us with any final words or encouragement you have. Certainly, as we hope, we've superseded time and place for 1 month, but still giving homage and recognition to why we're here today with Black History Month.
Yeah, well,
thanks, Sam.
Thank you. Dr. Detwald, thank you for what you do and the great friendship. And I would just say to anyone that is going to be listening to this, watching this, Black History Month is important for all of us. Whether you're black or not, it's still important. It's American history, number one. Number two, I would encourage us all to be reminded that we're all drinking from wells that we did not dig. There's so many people that have gone before us, that have laid the path for us, and our struggles today will be like wishes for them. And so sometimes we forget that. And then, of course, the last thing I would say is, you know, your faith. You may not believe what I believe, but we all believe something. And I just want to encourage people to believe in something bigger than who you are. And whatever that is, it's in you. And so you need to know that you can overcome any challenge, any adversity, anything that you're dealing with. You're bigger than what that is. And that's one lesson that I had to constantly learn how to apply to my life. And that's the work that I'm doing now by empowering people, because I recognize that before a culture can change, our collaboration has to change. And in order for our collaboration to change, our personal performance has to change. And so that's the work that I'm doing here at the college and the work that I'm doing with my business. And we hope that anything that you've heard today is going to help you move forward in your life and in your business. So thank you again, and we look forward to seeing you soon.